My name is Autumn Miller. I'm 33 years old and I live in Denver, Colorado. I work as an accountant for a small construction company. On the outside, it looks like a safe job, but in truth, it drains me completely. Every week, I work at least 55 to 60 hours, lost in endless numbers and reports. My salary is just enough to pay rent for my small two-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, plus food and bills. But I never feel safe. One sudden expense, like a car repair or hospital bill, is enough to throw my whole life into chaos. I've gotten used to this money stress. But what wears me down even more than money is my family. When I was 13, my parents divorced. 2 years later, both of them remarried and started new lives. I'm still their daughter, but sometimes I feel like nothing more than a faded shadow in the new families they built. My dad, Richard Miller, teaches chemistry at a high school. After the divorce, he married Elaine, a real estate agent. Elaine is famous in our family for her flashy lifestyle, full of designer clothes, fancy vacations in Miami or Las Vegas, and an attitude that makes her look down on anyone without money. My dad has followed her into this world of overspending, living beyond his means. But whenever I ask for support, he just shakes his head and says he doesn't have extra. My mom, Margaret, also remarried. Her husband Harold owns a small business and has more money than my dad. But Harold is stingy. He measures every penny and thinks every dollar must have a purpose. Their big suburban house is nice, but it never feels like mine. To Harold, I am just his wife's daughter, and that means he doesn't feel responsible for me at all. I have a younger sister, Emily, who is 29. She is the golden child in my mom's eyes. Emily studied at a top university on the East Coast, earned a master's degree, and married Daniel, a surgeon in Chicago. They live in a large home with 2 adorable kids. Emily is always praised as the successful one, the family role model. Meanwhile, I am constantly compared to her and looked down on, even though I've been the one quietly carrying the financial weight when the family needed help. My older brother Michael, who is 35, is a different story. He's smart and charming, but he never keeps a steady job. From failed sales gigs to startups, he always ends up buried in debt. He has a habit of calling me late at night, crying and begging for money, just a few thousand to get him through, always promising to pay it back. But he never does. He disappears, only to come back with another crisis. On my mom's side, things aren't much better. My Aunt Martha, her younger sister, is the only one I truly trust. She works as a school teacher, lives in a tiny apartment, and drives an old Toyota that rattles every time it starts. Even without much money, she always shows up for me, whether it's taking me to the hospital or listening when I need to talk. In contrast, Aunt Ruth, my dad's sister, acts superior all the time. She married a rich man, and since then she looks down on anyone less wealthy. At every holiday, she throws little insults my way. Autumn, when are you going to leave that tiny apartment and buy a real house? Her son Ryan is just like her, entitled but unsuccessful. He has a gambling problem and is buried in debt, yet the family pretends not to notice. I once gave up all my savings to send Michael to rehab, only to find out later he never even went inside. I paid part of Emily's huge wedding bill with my credit card because she promised to pay me back after her honeymoon. It's been 4 years, and not a single dollar has come back. Even my dad, I helped him pay for roof repairs after a storm, only to see him and Elaine posting photos from Mexico just a month later, cocktails in their hands. These financial wounds cut deep, and they've destroyed my trust. I still work hard, still save what I can, but deep down I fear that my family only sees me as an ATM, not a person. The only one who knows the full truth of how much I've been used is my best friend Rachel, a nurse I met in college. She understands me and is always the one who pulls me back whenever I feel like giving up. My life is a cycle I can't seem to escape, endless work, constant bills, and heartbreak from the people who should have been my support. My 33rd birthday came on a Friday, right after another exhausting week. My boss had just smiled and taken full credit for a financial report I spent sleepless nights finishing. I walked out of the office feeling empty. No one at work remembered my birthday. No family dinner was waiting. On my way home, I stopped at the small convenience store on Kvax. The old owner, Gus, greeted me the same way he always did. "What's new today, Autumn?" I forced a small smile and handed him a $20 bill. "Give me a few lottery tickets." "It's my birthday. I feel like taking a risk." Gus laughed, handed me the tickets, and said, "Maybe this will be your surprise gift." Usually, I let the machine pick numbers for me. But that night, I decided to choose my own. I picked my mom's birthday 5, my dad's 14, Emily's 22, Michael's 27, Aunt Martha's 8, and the day I met Rachel 11. Just 6 numbers, chosen to comfort myself. I didn't know it then, but those 6 little numbers were about to change my life forever. That night, I ordered a pizza, opened the bottle of wine Rachel had given me, and turned on the TV to break the silence of my apartment. At exactly 8 p.m., the lottery numbers were announced. I held the ticket without hope, already expecting disappointment. The first number came, 5, my heart jumped. Then 14. I held my breath. Next came 22, 27, 8, and finally 11. I froze. The wine bottle slipped from my hand and spilled across the wooden floor. All 6 numbers matched. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone to double-check on the official website. There was no mistake. I was the only winner of a $52 million jackpot. After taxes, that meant around $31 million. Just the day before, I had been worrying about how to pay my electric bill. Now, I had more money than I could even imagine. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat scrolling through news stories about other lottery winners. But what I found weren't happy endings. They were nightmares. Friends disappearing. Families destroyed by greed. Winners going bankrupt in just a few years. Some even lost their lives because of people who wanted their money. A chill ran through me. If my family found out about this, they would tear me apart like hungry wolves. The very next morning, I called a financial attorney, Philip Harris. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and sharp, kind eyes. When I slid the ticket across his desk, he didn't gasp. He just raised an eyebrow, then nodded. "You came to the right place. The most important thing now is silence and a solid plan." We spent 2 hours talking. Philip explained how to set up an anonymous trust so no one would know my name, how to invest so the money wouldn't disappear, and how to protect my identity. "The biggest mistake lottery winners make is showing off," he warned. "Once the word spreads, you'll never have peace again." I nodded, sweat running down my back. I had never held something this big in my life. All I could do was write down everything he said, trying to stay calm. For the next 2 weeks, nothing looked different on the outside. I still went to work every morning. I still drove my old Corolla. But behind the scenes, a new life was being built: investment accounts, retirement funds, insurance, and a plan that could keep me secure even at 100 years old. Sometimes, alone in my apartment, I wanted to scream with joy. I had finally escaped my biggest fear, being broke. But then I remembered Elaine's mocking voice telling me I'd never be like Emily. I remembered Aunt Ruth's smug remarks. Michael's silence after borrowing money. Those memories reminded me why I had to keep my secret. Still, the weight of silence pressed down on me like a stone. I thought about my mom, my dad, and all the relatives who had hurt me. Then a dangerous thought entered my mind. What if I tested them? What if I pretended to be in trouble, just to see how they would treat me when I had nothing? If they chose to help me without knowing about the lottery, I would finally know who truly cared. The idea burned brighter every day. When the legal work with Philip was finished, I officially became a woman who could live without worry for the rest of her life. But instead of pure joy, I felt uneasy. At night, I lay awake, imagining my relatives' faces if they ever learned the truth. Elaine's eyes scanning me up and down. Ruth's smirk. Michael's desperate begging messages. If they knew I had millions, they'd circle me like vultures. That was when my bold plan became clear. I would test them. I wanted to know, once and for all, who in my family would actually help me if I hit rock bottom. So I invented a story. I told myself I'd say my company went bankrupt, that I lost my job, that I needed $5,000 to pay rent and cover medical bills. Not a huge number, especially for Emily with her fancy Chicago house, or my dad and Elaine with their real estate bragging, but just enough to see who really cared. I spent hours crafting my story. I said the company shut down because the director was under investigation, that my last paycheck was withheld, and my health insurance cut off. I added that I had just gone through medical tests, leaving me drowning in bills. I practiced how to say it, when to pause, even stood in front of the mirror to control my face. Rachel was the first to know. I invited her over and told her everything. Her eyes widened, and she set her teacup down so hard the liquid splashed out. Autumn, are you serious? This sounds more like a dangerous game than a test. I need to know the truth, I said firmly. I've given up my savings for them again and again. If I were truly in trouble, would they be there for me? I need an answer. Rachel sighed, looking right at me. You know the outcome will hurt more than you expect. But if you're determined, I won't stop you. Just be ready. That night, I opened a leather notebook and wrote down every name: Mom and Harold, Dad and Elaine, Emily and Daniel, my brother Michael, Aunt Martha, Aunt Ruth and her son Ryan. Every single one had taken something from me before. Now, they would face a different Autumn, the one who was weak and in need. In my mind, I pictured each reaction. Mom might show sympathy, but Harold would refuse. Dad would lecture me and then pull away. Elaine would be cold. Emily, busy with her kids and renovations, would probably just send kind words. Michael, I didn't even dare hope. Ruth would likely use the chance to insult me. Ryan was drowning in debt already. The only one I believed might truly help, even with her little means, was Aunt Martha. The plan felt cruel, but I had no other way to find the truth. I didn't want to keep living with the fear that I was just my family's walking wallet. The next day, I met Philip again to make sure every cent of my money was fully protected. After hearing my plan, Philip frowned but didn't stop me. You're searching for truth. Just remember, sometimes truth comes in the harshest ways. He reminded me to keep all important documents locked safely, so no one could ever trace my secret. That night, I sat alone in my quiet apartment. My old Corolla was parked downstairs, and the cold Denver autumn air drifted through the window. I clutched my phone tightly. One call, and the plan would begin. I knew there would be no going back. Whatever illusion of love my family had shown me might break forever. Still, I had to know. I opened my contacts and saw Mom, Margaret, glowing on the screen. My finger trembled. This was the first test. How would my own mother react if I told her I need $5,000 or I'll lose my apartment? It was a gamble of the heart, and I was ready to roll the first dice. I called. Her voice came through, a little rushed, as if she was busy. I carefully told her my story, the company shutting down, my last paycheck withheld, medical bills piling up. I forced my voice to tremble. Oh my goodness, Autumn, Mom gasped. That's terrible. But have you tried applying for unemployment? Or asking your father? Harold and I are still paying off the vacation house in Montana. Our budget is so tight right now. I bit my lip. She never said the word no, but every sentence pushed the responsibility onto someone else. Maybe ask Emily. Daniel's a doctor. Surely they can handle this better, she added with a falsely soothing tone. I whispered, yes, I understand. But inside, I knew she wouldn't help. The next day, I met Dad at a small cafe near the school where he worked. As soon as he saw me, he frowned. You look exhausted. What's going on? I repeated the story, telling him I needed $5,000. He set his coffee down slowly and tapped his fingers on the table. Autumn, how many times have I told you? Always keep at least 6 months of savings. This is a hard lesson you need to learn. I forced a weak smile. But Dad, I've tried everything. I just need help this once. He shook his head. Elaine and I are preparing for retirement. We can't spend carelessly. Take this as a chance to change your lifestyle. Elaine, sitting beside him, cut in sharply. We have no obligation to support you at your age. You need to learn true independence. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. Next was Emily. I drove almost 2 hours to her big suburban home, where the lawn looked like it came out of a magazine. She hugged me, her eyes wide as I told her the story. "Oh my gosh, sis, how did this happen?" She pulled me into the kitchen and poured me a latte from her shiny machine. My heart flickered with hope. But when I mentioned the $5,000, she froze. "This is really tough timing. We just bought a new SUV for the kids and remodeled the bathroom. I'll have to check with Daniel. He manages all our finances." I sat in silence. She quickly added, "If you need, you can stay in our guest room. We'll tidy it up for you." I nodded, but deep down, I knew I would never accept. Michael was next. I didn't even want to call him, but I couldn't leave him out. I texted him the short version of the story. An hour later, he replied, "That's rough. I'm strapped too. I'll help when I can." Then nothing. When I tried calling, it went to voicemail. Days passed. My texts went unanswered. The same brother who once cried on the phone begging me for thousands now couldn't even spare a few minutes. I tried Aunt Ruth. After listening to me, she gave a short, cold laugh. "I told you to choose a stable job instead of that tiny company. Now you see the result. Adults must take responsibility, Autumn." Her voice sliced through me like a knife. Not even one word of comfort. Her son Ryan acted eager. "Don't worry, cousin. I'll help. I'll pull something together this week." But when the day came, he had excuses. Then he vanished. I knew from the start he never meant it. I closed my notebook. My heart felt heavy as stone. Every single person I had once helped, now they either made excuses, criticized me, or disappeared. I thought I had prepared myself, but every cold answer still cut into me. One afternoon, as I sat silently on my sofa, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Aunt Martha. She hadn't even been on my list, but somehow she had heard from my mom. "Autumn, are you all right? I heard you lost your job." Her voice was full of worry. I choked out, I'm trying to get by." She didn't press. Instead, she asked me to meet her at a small diner nearby. The next day, I went. She was the same as always, wearing an old sweater, her silver hair neatly tied back, and her warm smile. After asking a few caring questions, she pulled an envelope from her purse. "I have $3,000. I know it's not enough, but at least it will cover your rent this month. And if you need, my little apartment always has space for you." I froze. I knew her teacher's salary barely covered her own life, and she still had to pay for her diabetes medication. I shook my head. "I can't take this. You need this money yourself." But she pushed the envelope toward me. "Family helps each other. You've given so much to everyone else. Now it's my turn." I looked at her thin, worn hands, and my chest swelled with emotion. The richest and most comfortable people in the family gave excuses, but the one who had the least, the one who was struggling herself, gave the most. That night, when I was alone, I opened the envelope she gave me. Inside was $3,000, almost all of her savings. Tears filled my eyes, not because of the money, but because I finally saw the truth. Only Aunt Martha loved me with no conditions. I closed my journal, a strong new feeling burning inside me. The test was over. I finally had the answer to the question that haunted me all these years. In the Miller family, who was truly my family? Now, I was ready to take my next step, but not in the way they expected. That night, I couldn't sleep. The envelope from Aunt Martha still lay on the table, reminding me of the huge difference between her and the rest of them. I knew I couldn't keep lying to her. She deserved the truth. The only person who had been real with me should know everything. The next day, I invited her to my apartment. She came with a small bag of toast and a jar of homemade jam. "I thought maybe you weren't eating properly, so I brought something for you," she said softly. My throat tightened with gratitude and guilt. We sat on the old sofa, the afternoon sunlight shining through the window. Looking into her gentle eyes, I gathered all my courage. "Aunt Martha, I need to tell you something." "The truth is," I lied. Her eyebrows went up, not with anger, but with curiosity. I took a deep breath. "I didn't lose my job. I don't need rent money. I made it up to see who in the family would help if I was in trouble. And only you did." Silence filled the room. I was scared she would be hurt, but instead she sighed and placed her thin hand on mine. "I'm not angry," she said softly. "I'm just sad that you had to go this far just to find out the truth. But I understand." Tears filled my eyes. Before I could speak, she continued. "Do you know why I divorced my ex-husband? People think we just fell out of love, but the truth is darker. When your grandmother died, I inherited $40,000. For me, that was a lot of money. I wanted to save it to buy a small home. But my ex-husband, Robert, changed when he saw the money. Pretending it was for our future, he forged my signature and withdrew it all to invest in his friend's restaurant. Within a year, the restaurant failed. The money was gone, and so was our marriage. When I confronted him, he just said, 'It was our money.' I had the right. That's when I realized something important. Money doesn't change people, it only shows who they really are." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were firm. "Autumn, you've seen it too. Don't care about people who only see you as money. Never forget, money can buy many things, but never honesty." I nodded, tears running down my face. "You're the only one who didn't turn away. I can't hide this anymore. Martha, I won the lottery, $52 million. After taxes, about $31 million. I've done all the legal work to keep it secret. You're the first person I've told." Her eyes went wide, her hand shaking. "Oh my God, Autumn. Are you serious?" I nodded. She sat quietly for a moment, then gave a small smile. "My dear, that's a blessing, but also a test. I'm glad you can live without worry now. But remember, the more money you have, the more careful you must be with people." I squeezed her hand tightly. "I want to use this money to take care of you. You've given so much, and I know your medical bills and hospital visits have been hard. I'll buy you a small, cozy home where you'll never have to worry again." She quickly shook her head. "No, Autumn. I don't need that. I'm used to my apartment. I'm used to living simply." I looked at her firmly. "You gave to me when you had nothing. Now that I have everything, I will give to you. Not because I pity you, but because I'm grateful." Her eyes filled with tears, and finally, she nodded slightly. "If that's what you want, I won't stop you. But promise me something. Never let money control you. Use it to build a good life and share it only with those who truly deserve it." That evening, when she left, I stood by the window watching her small but strong figure walk down the street. In that moment, I understood. The money hadn't just given me freedom. It gave me the chance to repay kindness and to redefine what family meant. A family built on love, not greed. 1 week later, after my talk with Aunt Martha, I made a decision I never thought I could make. I called the whole family to my apartment. I typed a short message, "This Sunday, 5 p.m., come to Autumn's place. I have something important to say." I gave no details. I knew curiosity would bring them. On the day, they all arrived. My mother, Margaret, came with Harold, both looking unwilling. My father, Richard, wore an old button-down shirt. Elaine carried a new designer purse. Emily and her husband, Daniel, brought their kids, but left them in the car with the nanny. Michael showed up last, messy and smelling of alcohol. As expected, Aunt Ruth came too, dragging Ryan along, his face pale but forcing a smile. The small living room felt crowded, the tension heavy in the air. Standing in the middle, my heart beat fast, but my voice was steady. "Thank you for coming. Today, I want to talk about what happened recently. When I pretended to need help, only one person in this family stepped forward. The rest of you, I looked at each of them. You gave excuses, stayed silent, or criticized me." The room exploded with voices. My mother, Margaret, jumped in first. "Autumn, you can't blame me. You know Harold is strict with money. I couldn't decide alone." Harold cut in coldly. "And why should we be responsible for your career choices?" my father said, clearing his throat, arms crossed. "Autumn, you're being too sensitive. I didn't say no because I don't care. I wanted to teach you a lesson about being prepared," he continued. Elaine jumped in sharply. "Grown-ups must face hard times. If you always expect others to carry you, you'll never grow up." Emily sighed, her voice sweet but fake. Sis, I really wanted to help, but our expenses were just too much. I even offered you a place to stay. Wasn't that helping? Daniel sat beside her quietly, nodding but saying nothing. Michael gave a bitter laugh. Please. Like I'm swimming in money? I've got debts too. If you needed help, why not ask Mom more? Ruth looked smug. I told you, Autumn. Working as an accountant at some small firm would never be steady. And now you blame us? You should have listened to me from the start. Ryan spoke up, cousin, I really wanted to help, but things got messy. Don't think I didn't care. I stood still, letting all their excuses pour out. Then I spoke, slow but sharp. To be honest, I'm not surprised. I've helped every single one of you, from small favors to thousands of dollars. But when I needed help, only Aunt Martha stepped forward. She gave me almost all her savings, even though she's sick herself. That says everything. Martha sat quietly in the corner, lowering her head. I don't need excuses. I don't need guilt, I continued. I just want you all to know this. Starting today, I'm setting boundaries. Don't call me at midnight for loans. Don't expect me to pay for your vacations, weddings, or problems. We're still family, but this relationship will no longer depend on me paying the price to be valued. The room went silent. Margaret's lips trembled. So, you're cutting ties with us? I shook my head. No. I'm just refusing to be used anymore. I've accepted a new job with better pay and benefits. I don't need anyone to support me. I can take care of myself. Richard raised an eyebrow. Well, good. Glad you finally learned responsibility. Elaine smirked coldly. Emily sighed to Daniel, whispering that I was just being dramatic. Michael avoided my eyes, busy with his phone. At that moment, I knew they would never change. Their excuses only proved what I already knew. They never saw me as family, only as someone to use. The meeting ended quickly. One by one, they left, annoyed. Only Martha stayed behind, helping me clear the table. When the door finally closed, I sat down and took a long breath. For the first time in my life, I felt lighter, like I had dropped years of silence. Martha laid her hand on my shoulder, smiling gently. You did the right thing. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how you protect your worth. I nodded, feeling a quiet strength rise inside me. After that tense family meeting, I realized it was time to rewrite my life. In the days that followed, I went back to work, staring at spreadsheets and contracts. But my heart felt empty. I didn't want to waste my youth working for a company that never valued me. One morning, I walked into my boss's office, placed my resignation letter on his desk, and said firmly, I've given enough. Now it's time to build something meaningful for myself. I didn't choose to retire in luxury. Instead, I started planning a nonprofit. The idea came from Aunt Martha, a woman who lived simply, gave quietly, and rarely received help. I wanted this foundation to serve elderly people who had been forgotten by their families. After many meetings with Attorney Philip and some advisors, the Silver Light Foundation was born. Our mission was to provide medical help, home repairs, and, most importantly, friendship for seniors living alone. At the same time, I searched for a new home. After weeks, I bought a modest 2-story house in a quiet Denver suburb. The backyard was big enough for the rose garden I had always dreamed of but never dared to plant when money was tight. Just a few blocks away, Aunt Martha moved into her own new home, bought under the foundation's name so she wouldn't feel like a burden. It was cozy 1-story, with wide doors for the days her health weakened. Seeing her smile in that bright kitchen, I knew I made the right choice. From then on, my life completely changed. Mornings were spent running the foundation. Afternoons with volunteers, visiting seniors, listening to their stories. No longer haunted by bills or deadlines, I found joy in the gratitude shining in their eyes. Rachel, my best friend, joined me, taking charge of the medical programs. We often joked that 2 struggling women had now become partners in something bigger than ourselves. As for the Miller family, I kept in touch, but only from a distance. On birthdays and Christmas, I sent cards, sometimes short calls. No more long talks filled with blame and expectations. They felt the distance, but didn't seem to care. I realized sometimes thin connections bring more peace than forced closeness. Still, at times, I quietly helped them, not out of duty, but compassion. When Richard had a heart attack and the bills were too high, the hospital suddenly received an anonymous payment. When Ryan entered rehab, the costs were covered by a mystery sponsor. No one ever knew it was me. I didn't want my help to turn into another reason for them to use me. I only wanted to know I had done the right thing. Even without thanks. In the evenings, I often sat in my garden, watching the warm lights from Martha's house nearby. She often came over for dinner, or we tended plants together. One night, she laughed and said, "Autumn, you've turned fate's gift into something meaningful." Not everyone could do that. I held her frail hand, knowing I was no longer alone. Rachel visited often, too, bringing hospital stories or sharing wine with me on the porch. "I've never seen you this happy," she said warmly. I smiled and answered, because for the first time, I'm living my own life, not anyone else's. The old doors had closed. No more false responsibilities. No more being belittled or used. I built a new circle around me, one rooted in respect and real care. Each morning, as sunlight filled my windows, I knew I had chosen the right path. My life didn't change just because of a lottery ticket. It changed because I dared to set limits, dared to speak up, and dared to trust the right people. Sometimes I wondered if the Miller family ever found out the truth. Would they regret the way they treated me? Maybe, but it no longer mattered. Because at last, I had found freedom, peace, and a home of my own. 1 year later, I sat on the porch of my house, watching the roses in my garden sway gently in the evening breeze. That moment made me realize something. The journey itself had given me a lesson no amount of money could ever buy. Yes, the lottery ticket changed my life. But what truly transformed me wasn't the lucky numbers. It was the truth it revealed. The Miller family never really changed. Emily sent me photos of her children's fancy birthday parties, but rarely asked how I was. Richard and Elaine kept up their image of living well, posting vacation pictures while still complaining about bills. Michael stayed away until his debts piled up again. Ruth never stopped her sharp remarks at family gatherings. And Ryan, I heard he had fallen back into gambling. Instead of feeling hurt, I felt relieved. Because now, I expected nothing from them. I no longer asked myself if I was worthy of their love. The lottery hadn't changed anyone's heart. It only showed me what had been true all along, that most of them only measured my worth in money. But with Aunt Martha and Rachel, I saw something very different. Martha gave me almost everything she had when I was at my lowest. Rachel listened to my fears and frustrations, never once asking for anything in return. They showed me that the true value of a relationship is not measured by wealth, but by who will hold your hand when you have nothing else left. I'll never forget one moment during a gathering hosted by the Silver Light Foundation. An 82-year-old woman with snow-white hair held my hand and whispered, "Thank you. Not for the money, but for reminding me I still matter." Her words shook me deeply. In that instant, I understood. Happiness didn't come from winning the lottery. It came from how I chose to use that gift. It came from creating meaning. Sometimes I wonder, if I had announced my win, maybe my family would have become more loving. But then I would never know who truly cared and who only stayed for the money. That silent test I gave them, harsh as it was, gave me something priceless: freedom from false illusions. One autumn evening, Martha sat with me on the porch, her eyes shining softly under the warm light. She said, "Autumn, you've used the money wisely. But more importantly, you've learned to see what's real and what's not." I squeezed her hand and replied, "Now I understand, Aunt. Money doesn't change people. It only reveals who they really are." If anyone hears my story, I hope they learn this: happiness doesn't come from wealth. It comes from knowing who truly deserves to walk beside you. That choice, sometimes painful, is what saves us from toxic ties. I looked toward Martha's little house down the street and smiled. I knew then my true family was not defined by blood, but by unconditional love. Autumn's journey teaches a hard but valuable truth: money doesn't change people, it only uncovers who they really are. In today's world, many families measure love by what they can gain. But like Autumn, We all have the right to set boundaries, to seek real connections, and to treasure the ones who care for us without conditions. True happiness is not in wealth, it's in peace of mind, and in love that never asks for a price. What about you? Do you agree with Autumn's choices? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family, life, and the hidden truths of human relationships.